So let me explain how. Because the United States and Israel, they're just attacking Iran, okay? And they attack with air power, so that's very blunt, right? Okay, so you go from one step to the next, to the next, to the next, okay? This is the classic escalation ladder. Iran is not like this. Their decision tree is different, okay? Because their strategy is to force the United States to admit defeat and retreat from the GCC, okay? To close down the military bases in the Middle East so that Iran has control over the Strait of Hormuz and therefore it can control all world trade, all right? So that's the strategy. So this strategy means that you have different options, all right? Your options are attack Israel, military targets, civilian targets, Tel Aviv, okay? All right, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but as you can see, if you think about it, Iran can be much more selective in its targeting than the United States and Israel. And therefore, the options that it has, it is much more diverse, which gives Iran escalation control over the situation. Okay? Do you guys understand this? All right. So let's look at why Iran has advantages over the escalation ladder. Okay? U.S., Iran. The first major difference is that Iran is active, whereas the U.S. is passive. Okay? Another thing this is, go back to the bully example where the bully has to maintain credibility. He has to show that he's more powerful than the other kids, right? So if you provoke him, he has no choice in the matter but to hit you, okay? But you, the new kid, can choose whether or not to provoke him or not. You can choose the timing of when to provoke him. Therefore, you are active, okay? The second big difference is that Iran has a clear strategy. It knows what it wants to accomplish and it knows how to accomplish what it wants. Remember, what Iran wants is control the Strait of Hormuz and the United States out of the Middle East. That's what it wants to do. And it's calibrating its attacks in a certain way to achieve this end goal. And it's working out very well for Iran, okay? The United States, on the other hand, doesn't know what it wants. It wants to destroy Iran. But what does that mean, okay? Destroy. It could mean regime change. It could mean economy collapses. It could mean the civilian population starves, okay? It could mean anything. But because there's so much ambiguity, so much confusion about what it means, it confuses military strategy, all right? And the last thing is, of course, is that Iran is flexible and the United States is inflexible. Okay? So by studying the escalation ladder, we discover that Iran has far more advantages than the United States. Okay? All right. So what does this mean? All right. It means that Iran will probably win this war ultimately. But there has to be major changes to its society in order to win this war. All right? So remember, to win a fight, you have to have three things: focus, clarity, and resolve. All right? You have to know what your purpose is. You have to know how to achieve it, and you have to be determined to achieve it, okay? So what does this mean for the Middle East? What does it mean for Iran? First thing is focus means unity. Meaning that you have to unite your population, which means basically crushing all dissent. We can't argue anymore. We have to unify for a purpose, okay? The second thing, clarity, is to censor people. Censorship. And we're already seeing that in Israel, where you're not allowed to film military strikes. Okay? If a drone comes and attacks Tel Aviv in Israel, you cannot film that and put on social media. Okay? The government will come and arrest you. Same thing in Dubai. You cannot show Dubai being attacked. Okay? So massive censorship going on. And resolve just means militarization, where the Middle East moves towards total war. Total war just means that every citizen now is recruited into the war effort. It just means that the entire economy is geared towards war. Okay? And one last point I'll make is this. What we need to understand about the escalation ladder is that as it moves up, we have to remember that this war is being fought multidimensionally. Okay? What does that mean? It means that the military is just one dimension, but there are 4 major dimensions. There are others, but let's focus on 4 major dimensions, okay? The first major dimension is narrative. Narrative is just basically world opinion. Second is political. Political just means the relationship of nations to each other. The relationship of the government to the people, okay? Political. The third dimension is economic. And the fourth is military. And what's really important to understand is that the military dimension is probably the least important. There are other dimensions that are much more important. Therefore, these 4 factors determine how the United States and Iran move up the escalation ladder. Okay? Because your purpose is to control the narrative and justify why you're doing what you're doing. Political means you still have to maintain good relations with other states, right? So as the United States is fighting this war against Iran, the United States is still talking to China. The United States is still talking to Russia, okay? So that discussion, that political discussion, determines the contours of this fight. Economic means that as this fight is still happening, nations are still trading with each other. And that factors into how the military is fought. Okay? Does that make sense? So I know this is very complicated, but you need to understand how complicated war is. It's not as simple as saying, you know what, let's nuke that guy. It doesn't work that way. Okay? There are a lot of constraints. There's a lot of factors, a lot of stakeholders involved to constrain the use of nukes. Okay? All right. So let's now discuss ground troops. All right. The first question we look at is, will ground troops be used? And the answer, unfortunately, is yes. They have to be used. And it has to do with how the military works, okay? Of how wars are fought. Basically, when you fight a war, you have to have a correct cost pyramid, okay? And the most simple cost pyramid, okay, is this. Infantry, soldiers, okay? All right? They're at the bottom. Why? Because they're the cheapest. What's above them? Armor. Okay? Artillery, tanks. They're more expensive to produce. You need more resources. You need more time. Then you have naval, right? Then you have air. Okay, does that make sense? This is the cost pyramid. And cost pyramid is just a question of like, how much energy, how much time, how much resources do you need to produce a certain product, okay? It costs you very little to produce a soldier, but it costs you a lot to produce an airplane. And this is important because wars are usually wars of attrition, meaning that you have to put all your resources into winning the war, okay? So this is just production capacity. And this is the most standard model that you have of a cost pyramid for a military war. Okay, does that make sense, guys? The problem is that the United States have an inverse pyramid. Okay? Meaning that air is what's dominant, then naval, then armor, then soldiers. You can't fight a war like this. I mean, the moment you choose to fight a war like this, you've lost the war. Because you either take out the country in like 2 days, or you're screwed over because you cannot replenish your forces. Now, I know this is hard to understand, but 1991, the Persian Gulf War, 2003, the Iraq War, these are not real wars, okay? Because the Americans were so dominant and Iraq was so weak that it was basically a video game, all right? It was just these pilots flying around, just bombing everything, okay? It's like guys in tanks just running over the Iraqi army. Those were just video games. But this Iran thing is a real war. And therefore, you cannot fight a war like this. If you want to win this war, the only thing you can do is return to a realistic cost pyramid. You don't have a choice in the matter, right? Because again, your cheapest product are soldiers, right? And your most expensive are airplanes. You cannot afford to use an airplane in order to save a life of a soldier. Eventually, this cost-benefit analysis will blow up on you, okay? Does that make sense, guys? All right, so if the United States wants to win this war, then it has no choice but to use ground troops, to use soldiers as the main force of its military. Any questions so far? All right, okay. Now the question then is, will the United States use ground troops? I already said that if the United States is to win this war, it has no choice but to use ground troops. But will the United States use ground troops? And a lot is determined by the game theory strategies of the different players, okay? So let's look at the 4 major players in this war. You have US, you have Israel, you have Saudi Arabia, and you have Iran. Okay?